So today we are talking about fitness assessments for hikers, and more specifically, how a hiker can assess their fitness while they are stuck at home. Now, if used right, assessments can be a really incredible way to judge your hiking fitness, to determine the effectiveness of your training, and to keep you motivated moving forward. And I highly recommend any hikers who are stuck at home at the moment, who might be months and 6 months or years away from their goals, to go through some of these assessments I'm about to explain today in order to sort of just see if the training they're doing is working, to see if they're getting better, if they're getting fitter, and to sort of keep them motivated or keep you motivated to keep your training up during this time when you might not be able to hit the trail as much as you can, or you might not be able to go to the gym. And I really think assessments can be a powerful way of any hiker to use in a number of different situations, whether it's for motivation, whether it's for judging your fitness or whatever. And I highly recommend you go about this. So today I'm going to be explaining a few bits and pieces around how you can go about creating your own fitness assessments, and then also a number of assessments that I often use for hikers, which you can do at home to judge your fitness. So to start with, let's talk about what makes a good assessment. If you're coming up with your own fitness assessments, what do you need to consider to ensure that they are right for you? Well, to start with, they need to be specific to you as a hiker. There is no point in doing just a random fitness test which a personal trainer has posted online if it has nothing to do with hiking fitness. A classic example of this is the old beep test, which people love to do. Now, the beep test we're all pretty familiar with from our high school days. It involves running back and forth over a 10-meter track. A beep tells you how quick you need to do it, and gets quicker and quicker and quicker, and then there's basically, by the end, you can't keep up with the beeps. You know, pretty simple. Lots of people do it. Lots of trainers love to do it still because it's simple, it's easy, it's cheap. And it might be relevant for field athletes, though, like people who are doing soccer or touch football or something like that, though there are much better ways of going about it. It might be slightly relevant for them, but it's just not relevant for hikers and trekkers. It's not, hikers are not running to start, hikers are not doing that type of intensity, and it's just not incredibly relevant. So if you're doing a test for your aerobic fitness for hiking, it needs to be specific to hiking as opposed to just a random fitness test. Number two, it needs to be easily measurable, meaning you need to have numbers on this stuff. You need to be objective and not subjective, meaning it's not great to sort of say, hey, I did a 5 kilometer run, and today I felt good. And then do it in 8 weeks' time, and you're like, hey, I felt pretty good today. How do you know if you've improved? I don't know. It might just be you had a better sleep or something like that. Alternatively, if you did a 5 kilometer run and you did it in, I don't know, half an hour or something like that, and then in 8 weeks' time you did a 5 kilometer run and you did it in 25 minutes, that's a measurable improvement. And so you need to be choosing assessments which are measurable. Number three is repeatable. So it basically means if I did the same assessment here today at home, and then in 6 months' time I did it in the gym, or 6 months' time I did in another country, can I repeat this assessment? Is it still all going to be exactly the same, and the only thing that's going to have changed is my fitness? So, for example, a classic one of this is with a step test. So with a step test, you need to be doing the same height of the box each time you do the assessment. All in all, it doesn't really matter how high the box is, as long as you do the same thing again and again and again. Because if I did a step test on a 30 centimeter box 1 week, and then 8 weeks time I did it on a 60 centimeter box, even though it's going to be the same distance in total that I probably do, it's going to be completely different results. So you need to make sure something is pretty repeatable. Number four, it needs to be simple. There's no point doing super complex assessments. There's no point doing movement assessments or breakdowns if you don't know how to understand them. You're just want to doing things as simple as possible as a fitness assessment, because you don't need to have, unless you have a coach standing next to you or a coach who can help you break things down, you want to keep them simple. And then finally, they want to be a low risk of injury, meaning you don't want to be doing anything stupid, you don't want to do anything out of your comfort zone. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be relatively nice on the body. So now we've covered over those things. Here are a few different ways you can actually assess your fitness for hiking. And we're going to break this up into aerobic assessments, lower body strength assessments, upper body strength assessments, and core assessments. So to start with, aerobic assessments. There are basically three ways you can go about this. Well, there's a million ways you can go about this, but three ways generally I'd recommend. Number one would be some type of set distance. So you're going to say, hey, I'm going to do a 5 kilometer run, or I'm going to do the 1,000 foot step test, which we talked about in the podcast, or Joe talked about in the podcast the other day. This is basically you set yourself a particular distance, which is relatively specific to hiking, and you just take how long you judge how long it will take, and you aim to do it as quickly as possible. So each 4 weeks, you repeat it, and you see if I've gotten quicker, I've gotten better. Alternatively, you can do a set time. So you can set yourself up on a box. You say, I've got 20 minutes to do as many steps as I can, and you smash that out as many as you can in the time limit. Or you say, I've got 20 minutes to run, and I'm going to go run as far as I can in 20 minutes. Pretty relevant and pretty easy to measure, and that can be pretty good as well. Now, if you want to get a little bit more complicated here, you can. So if you want to be hitting particular energy systems, sometimes you can say do an assessment where you're going to step for 30 minutes, but you have to keep yourself at a pace where you're breathing through your nose. And what this does is make sure you're breathing, working in the aerobic energy systems, and it limits you to a particular type of intensity. You smash that out for 40 minutes, you get a score, and then say 8 weeks time, you do it again. You're still sticking at that nose breathing pace, but because you're fitter, your body can maintain a higher intensity in working with the aerobic energy system. It's pretty relevant to hikers and for trekkers. It might be a little bit too complicated for some, but it can be pretty effective. And the same thing if you set yourself a heart rate, and you're going to say, I'm going to step for half an hour at a 75% max heart rate. Do that again in 4 weeks, and hopefully you've done more steps at that 75% max heart rate, because your body has got fitter, your heart rate is generally lower, and you can sustain a higher intensity at the same heart rate. So there's 3 ways of going about it with your aerobic assessments. So as a really specific assessment, if you haven't listened to the podcast the other day from interviewing Joe, a really great assessment a hiker can do here is the 1,000-foot or 305-meter step test, which was created by the guys at Uphill Athlete. Basically, this involves finding a step which is about 3/4 up your shin. You measure the height of that step and work out how many times it'll take you to go up that step to equal out either 1,000 feet or 305 meters. And you put a pack on your back of either 10 to 20% of your total body weight, and you go out and do the required number of steps as quickly as you can. Super relevant for hiking, super repeatable, super easy to do, and yeah, it can be a really effective way of judging your aerobic fitness. So I'd probably highly recommend you go about that. Anyone can do that at home, and it can be really good. So next ones, we want to talk about lower body assessments, lower body strength assessments. Now these are a little bit simpler than aerobic assessments. Here you just want to choose movements that are relevant for hiking, the muscle groups for hiking, and you just want to judge your strength and endurance. Now, seeing hiking isn't an outrageously strong sport, or what I should say is you don't need huge amounts of maximal strength here. It's more endurance. We're not talking about things like 1 repetition maximum of squats or deadlifts or stuff people might do in a gym. You can do that, and some people it might be interesting to learn, but for the majority of hikers, it's not relevant, it's not safe, and it's not practical. Instead, you just want to choose a few simple exercises which you do as many repetitions as you can. So a few really simple ones here. Single leg calf raise assessment. How many calf raises can you do on each leg? Write that down. You can judge that as you go through. A single leg glute bridge assessment. Lying on the floor. Heel goes on the floor, nice and close to your bum. Push your hips up to the sky. How many of those can you do in a row? Or another one I absolutely love is the single leg rise assessment, where you find a chair or a bench or a couch, which when you're sitting down, your knees are about 90 degrees. You put arms across your shoulders, one leg goes in the air, one leg's on the floor, and you just go up and down on that one leg, all the way up to standing, all the way down to the chair as many times as you can. Now that's an amazing one at judging knee stability, but it's also really relevant for muscles when it comes to hiking. For anyone who's interested in these assessments, I'm going to put together a little download which you can download in the show notes, so you'll be able to check that out. Moving on to core assessments, there's lots and lots of core ones, but really the only one that's I would recommend that's easy to do and that's practical is just a plank assessment. So that's literally just holding a plank for as long as you can, either on your knees or on your toes. Really simple. You don't have to get complicated with that, and that's something you can judge moving forward if your abdominals or your core strength is getting a little bit stronger, developing the endurance, and that's easy enough to do. For upper body assessments, again, upper body isn't super important for hikers. There is some elements of upper body, but it's not outrageously important. So keeping this simple, again, push-ups, probably that's the main one you do, is if you wanted to judge this, is just how many push-ups can you do in a row. If you can't do a full push-up on your toes, you'd be doing either an incline or a wall push-up. So basically, the higher your hands go on a piece of furniture or on a wall, the easier it is. So if you can't do a full push-up, you might try doing that off a bench, off a countertop, off a chair, with your hands on either any of those. Or if you really can't do that, just putting your hands on the wall and how many times you can do that. Again, pretty easy, pretty relevant. And the only other one, if you are, really into your backpacking, would be doing a pull-up assessment. So how many pull-ups can you do in a row? Or alternatively, if you can't do pull-ups, how many inverted rows you might be able to do. So if there's, for example, a bar, which you go underneath the bar and you pull yourself up to the bar as many times as you can, horizontally as opposed to vertically with the pull-ups. For most hikers, it's not going to be super practical, but if you are really interested in getting comprehensive, that's a good one to do. So there's sort of a number of assessments any hiker can do at home. It's all pretty straightforward, all pretty simple, but all of those are super specific for hiking. They're all super relevant, they're easy to measure, they're practical, and they're pretty safe. So I would recommend probably going through all of those, or choosing one of the aerobic ones and going through all the other ones. Super simple, and I would recommend that. Now, when should you be assessing to wrap things up? Basically, I wouldn't say just do this every week. You sometimes can get way too wrapped up in just testing, and you forget to actually train. So I would say probably do this every 4 to 6 weeks, just to judge your progress moving on, and sort of keep a track, write it down so you know what's going on. And that's really simple enough to do. And if you do end up doing 4 weeks of training and none of the assessments has gone up, then you got to ask yourself the question, look, am I doing the right training? And if you're not, then you might have to talk to someone. So there's a few ideas for any hikers that's stuck at home who might be interested in assessing their fitness, who might be interested in ensuring their motivation stays constant throughout, and might be interested in just making sure their training is doing the right things moving forward. As I said, if anyone's interested in these assessments, I'm going to put a little downloadable thing in the show notes where you can download it and you can check them all out written up. But if you do have any questions, please just let me know. I'm always happy to help. So I hope you've gotten some good ideas in this episode, guys. As always, drop me a review if you could. I'd really, really appreciate it. It goes a long way for me. But I hope you all have a lovely day, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.